Councilor Condon. Councilor Crowe. Councilor Linehan. Councilor McDonald. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Seega.
Here.
Councilor Simonelli. Councilor Spatafora. Councilor Winslow. Council President Murphy.
First order of business, I need a motion to suspend, do you want to read it and we'll have a motion to suspend docket rules?
You have to suspend
First, okay. Need a motion to suspend docket rules, please, for us to discuss paper 315-23. Motion by Councilor Crowe, seconded by Councilor Condon. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Council rules are suspended. Clerk, if you would please read the paper.
Paper 315-23, presentation by City Planner, Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, and the City Consultant, Stantec Urban Places, regarding MBTA Community Zoning Law, M.G.L, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, draft zoning scenario and request for state review as required by new compliance guidelines issued by the Executive Office of Housing and Livability Communities, FKA, Department of Housing and Community Development.
Thank you. Ms. Burke, would you like to come up to the podium?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Deborah Burke. I'm the Director of the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. This evening, we want to give you an update on the MBTA community zoning and the state making up the rules kind of as we go along here. They just came out with new guidance a couple of weeks ago. And we have Stantec here, who is our consultant, who's been doing a lot of work on this project and guiding us through the development of various zoning scenarios. Michelle Romero was here too. She's put an extensive amount of time into the development of this presentation this evening. And Andrew McCullough, who's the new senior planner in my office, is here as well. And he joined the team maybe about 2 months ago. So if you don't mind, we want to be able to answer your questions, but I'd like to turn it over, Council President, to the two consultants from Stantec, if that's okay with you.
That's correct. So when you say you'd like to answer our questions, would you like to go through the presentation first and then have our questions at the end? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that would be helpful, just so that you don't interrupt the flow of going through a presentation. But obviously, if you see something glaring that you really need, then it's your call.
Okay.
And one thing I do want to point out, we don't need a vote this evening. This meeting was intended to be informational in nature because of the change in the guidance. I think some of the change is great because it now is going to allow mixed-use development, which is what the councilors, we heard loud and clear, wanted. We didn't want to start eroding our commercial base any further, so this will allow for, mixed-use development in some of the zoning areas. So, but again, we don't need a vote. The reason we're doing the presentation tonight is because we have to have a draft plan into the state next Tuesday for its review.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind reintroducing yourselves. I know we have met, but it's been a while, so.
Hi, I'm Sarah Brent McCoy. I work for Stantec.
Hi, and I am Nels Nelson, Senior Planner at Stantec.
Thank you.
Should
Laura,
we get started? Okay. Hi, everyone. We are here to discuss the latest with Malden's pursuit of compliance with Chapter 40A, Section 3A, MBTA community zoning. A version of this slide might seem familiar to some of you, but I'm just going to go through it to get us all on the same page. The purpose of the law is to encourage the production of multifamily housing, and it requires all the communities on that map in color to adopt zoning districts where a specific amount of multifamily housing is allowed as of right. There are other requirements set forth in the statute and the guidelines that we also have to follow to comply. Malden's specific amount of multifamily housing that it needs to have zoning capacity for is 6,930 units. As Debbie mentioned, the compliance deadline that we've been working towards is December 31st, 2023. But if we are to pursue this mandatory mixed-use option, we do need to seek pre-approval from the state 90 days in advance. So that's Tuesday. So just to remind, again, this is not a housing production mandate, and noncompliance can result in legal action or forfeiture of eligibility for various state grants. So before we get to our draft proposal, I want to walk through some of the things that we've been keeping in mind as we develop this scenario with the city planner and Office of Strategic Development and Strategic Planning and Community Development. We've tried to put together a scenario that meets all requirements related to the contiguity of the area, the location, density, dimensional standards. Following feedback from this group and the community, we are prioritizing areas near transit to, again, not just respond to the intention of the law, but align with Malden goals and limit traffic impacts. We're using underlying zoning and existing land uses to develop multiple context-appropriate sets of dimensional standards for appropriate existing neighborhoods. We've been working to preserve existing and support future commercial uses in Malden Center, taking advantage of the new mandatory mixed-use option. We're looking to preserve a diversity of housing types, limiting conversions of small lot, single and two-family residences. And I think this is reflected in most of these, but to be clear about it, we're responding to what are now preliminary survey results. The survey closes on Friday, as well as public hearing input. So here's a table form of our draft proposal zoning scenario, revised last week in response to the latest from DHCD or Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The next slide will be a map. But here you'll see, again, we have that required total unit capacity of 6,930 units. And an important thing to note is that the mandatory mixed-use credit, Malden can only have 25%, up to 25% of its total capacity in a mandatory mixed-use district or overlay. So that number is 1,732. You'll see on the bottom row of that table that we're maxing out the number of units that we can put in that mandatory mixed use because we know it's important to Malden. Otherwise, I'll just go from the top. In Malden Center, we're putting a lot of capacity at dimensional standards that reflect what's there. In Oak Grove, we are adding more capacity than we did in the previous version of this, following input from preliminary results of the survey, and also just to get us to the required number. Altitude and Overlook Ridge, the capacity is equal to existing. We heard from this group that you didn't want to add capacity there, but you are in a sense, getting credit for the, fairly high-density housing that you already have. In the neighborhoods, we've redrawn that boundary a bit since we last came to you, and you'll see that the capacity is lower than the existing. So that's that table with the proposed dimensional standards. The two lines at the bottom, the capacity contiguous land, there is a requirement that 50% of Malden's unit capacity be connected, be part of contiguous land. So we're achieving that, and then at least 50% of your capacity needs to be within a half mile of your transit stations, specifically your T stations. And we're doing that as well. So looking at the map, the orange and green should look fairly similar. The blue, yellow, and pink are slightly adjusted to, one, respond to feedback that we've gotten from this group and through our working group and from the city planner, as well as so you'll see that Malden Center and the neighborhoods look quite different, and then of course this time we have the addition of the mandatory mixed-use district, which is new. I imagine we'll come back to this, but first I'll just walk through next steps. Or here's a closer look if we want to come back to this. Next steps, we're going to file this draft, and it's a draft zoning scenario with the state for review, just to meet that 90-day pre-approval deadline to make sure that our MMU area would be compliant. Once we obtain that determination of compliance, we can incorporate any comments and feedback that we get and deliver an updated packet of maps, impact analysis, survey results, final report, and EFA, economic feasibility analysis of inclusionary zoning to the city for review as it's ready by latest November. And then just over the course of the fall to the compliance deadline of December 31st, we'll undertake the process to amend the zoning ordinance and file the zoning ordinance with the state by that deadline still. I'll go back to the map. That's the end of my presentation. Unless there was anything you wanted to add.
I know. Excuse us for a moment, or didn't realize we were on school committee, otherwise I'm going to be guessing where everybody else is sitting.
One thing to clarify,
Councilors, please. Yes.
one thing to clarify, by mandatory mixed use, we mean there would be a ground floor commercial use on top of or below by right multifamily. So it would be required that you have that ground floor commercial use, and the state right now is specifying that it needs to be a broad range of commercial uses. You know, we talked about things like the Stop and Shop site. Saying that it has to be grocery really isn't, wouldn't be supported by the state as appropriate MMU for these purposes. So you'll see on the max height, we have 7 asterisks. That would be six stories of housing on top of 1 story of commercial.
I'm sorry, could you just go over that one more time? It's just a little louder and just
Sure.
that was
By mandatory mixed use, with the mandatory mixed use, we can require that anyone developing under this overlay in the mandatory mixed use district include a first floor of commercial use to be allowed to build by right housing above it.
Okay.
In the pink on the map.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Linehan.
Thank you. Thank you for this. It's very helpful. You may have said this, but can you elaborate or re-explain why the mandatory mixed-use max is 25%? Is that just what the state is specifying for everybody?
That's what the state is specifying. It's 25% for everybody. So that number is just whole number,
Flat for-
25% for.
Okay, and it's
Yeah.
not, are certain communities eligible to do that and others aren't? Like, are we able to do it because we're rapid transitors? Just everybody that's under this can do mixed use now?
It's everybody. Yeah.
Okay. My other question was about how you're going to incorporate the survey results, and if you could talk a little bit about how the survey was distributed and what your expected time frame is for, you know, collating all of that, tabulating, and then kind of incorporating it into this, and how we might get a report back on that, when that might happen.
Sure. I'll also specify for the mandatory mixed use, everyone is allowed to take advantage of it, but you do need to have an existing mixed use district for which
Okay.
it makes sense.
Okay.
Or there needs to be, DHCD needs to believe that it makes sense to have a mixed use first floor commercial district in the area that you propose.
Or make sense, existing or make sense in
Yeah.
their estimation?
Right.
That's fuzzy.
Yeah. And
Okay.
we just got the email about MMU at the end of August, so.
Understood.
Yeah.
Glad they're listening, but not fully fleshed out yet.
Right.
Okay.
And the question about the survey, I'll have city staff confirm, tell me if I've missed anything, but we developed an online survey. We also have paper copies at the library and City Hall. There was a slip sent out with the water bills. And all schools. Received notice. And we also translated the survey into 6 other languages, languages other than English. And is there anything else about distribution? As for getting you the results, we did say from the beginning that we would keep the survey open through September 15th, just to have it open through the beginning of the school year,
Yeah.
in case people are not checking their email over the summer. And we also had it posted or advertised on kiosks.
Okay.
As for getting you the results, the beauty of the way that we've set up the form is that it's already giving us visualizations in real time of what the results look like. We do need to go through the results. We've received over 2,000 at this point. We do need to go through the results and confirm there are no duplicates or evidence that it's the same person
Yep.
answering multiple times in a row. As for getting you those, we would summarize the findings in the package of materials that we provide as ready. I mean, I assume that could be ready, one of the first things that we're able to provide in the next few weeks.
Not necessarily rushing, just wondering if it's something that we'll get a report back on, because I'm interested, and I'm glad to hear that you can see kind of the analytics as they're coming in, because I'd love to make sure that we're, if we're missing the mark with certain groups in proportion to how they are represented in the population, that maybe we could do another push. I don't know where our timing is, if we have to complete this. I know we set the 15th, but if we have any flexibility there, say we're only getting responses like around 5% from Chinese-speaking population, that's obviously way lower than what the ratio is, so would love to see another push, if that, just to take one example. I don't know if we have the ability to do that, but I would just personally like to see that to make sure it's as representative as possible.
We can also break out the responses by different groups. So, you know, at this point, renters are not as, you know, represented in equal measure to how they're represented in the city.
Okay.
So we could break out responses by different characteristics,
Okay.
If that's helpful. But as far as, I mean, it's, I do see the value of making additional pushes with specific groups, but we also want to be able to respond to this with the results that we give to the state
Yep,
soon, so.
understood. Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle,
Excuse me, I'll just add one quick thing. Michelle Romero, City Planner. We did do a push to individual community groups, the Asian community, several groups, GMAC, ACDC. We did through email, also the Brazilian community and the Muslim community. So we did do through emails,
Yep.
like we did with all the schools, public and private. Ask them to do outreach to all their events and members. So, and we've also run press releases in the newspapers,
Yep.
and it's been on the website, and it's also been on the electronic billboards throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have seen a lot of that on these organizations' social media and in language, which is fantastic. So thank you for doing that. Great.
Council Linehan, you? Councilor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Nels and Sarah Beth. I get that right. And, you know, I like a lot of what I see here. I mean, I think the shape of this map matches the feedback that we've given you. I'm really excited about the mandatory mixed use. I have two kind of basic questions. One, which I think that I know the answer to, is every time I get to see you in this lovely venue, I always ask you about affordability protections. And yes, we will, of course, I'm glad to see that we're going to file to make sure, of course, that we can keep our own inclusionary zoning ordinance, but we asked about affordability bonuses. And is that something that the group has looked at that would be above and beyond this qualifying set of dimensional controls, but that if you were going to have, you know, income restricted apartments, maybe you could build 4 stories, or you could reduce the parking requirements or something like that in certain districts? Is that something that the group has looked at all?
I mean, we have not. We're really just trying to work within the bounds of how the state is encouraging, you know, we're trying to get the economic feasibility analysis done by the deadline for the 15%, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so just, it's a mad rush. Okay, my second question is, like, can you go to the one that zooms in on the kind of the core map? Go to that slide. So this looks like the only word that I can come up with is gerrymandered to this particular map. Like, it's very parcel specific. And I understand part of that is because you're trying to comply with these proportionality things, right? But why would we not consider filling in some of these things? Like just filling in a little bit more of the Malden Center yellow, or just connecting a few more parcels that are skipped between things in the neighborhood zone. And I say that because, like, the ultimate calculation that we come up with is very tight. That's one reason. And this, for example, I mean, it looks like we've zoned Coydamore Lee Park in this demonstration, and I don't know how that's factored into your conversation. It looks like we've zoned both of the T stations. I don't know how that factors in. It looks like we've zoned the 110 Commercial Street National Grid property, which has environmental restrictions placed on it because they've been cleaning it up. And I'm not actually sure that legally we can build housing there. I mean, I would love to know, but I can't get a straight answer out of National Grid on that particular point. So I feel like that, one, opens us up to some sensitivity in that, and two, I feel like does not comply with what my hopes would be, which is to have some rational basis for how we're expanding this beyond complying with state rules. And if we think these neighborhood corridors are good, then they should look like corridors and not cherry pick the properties, and give ourselves just a little more breathing room, so that the map looks a little less like a patchwork. That is my feedback and perspective, and I welcome your thoughts on that.
Sure, thank you. I will say, okay, some of the avoided parcels, I believe, are historic properties. There was concern about including those. I'll also say that to get to the specific parcels that you pointed out, the park in the blue, to be able to connect and meet the connectivity requirement, that one is included, but because it is publicly owned, it is excluded from adding capacity or being,
So it's on the map, but not in the calculation?
That's right. Similarly, the T stations are on the map, but not in the calculation, or the two T station parcels for Malden Center are on the map, but not in the calculation, because there is hope that in the future, that at this point in time, the model from the state excludes those because they're state-owned, or sorry, they're publicly owned. But there's hope in the future that potentially, those are seen to be great opportunities to develop in the future. So while it's not contributing to the capacity, they're included. What else?
But the National Grid?
National Grid, we receive credit for those, and it's they're not excluded by the state's measure. I can't speak to where National Grid is or any relevant agencies are on the future of that site, but
can you tell me how much that parcel is contributing to the formula? Not this in this second,
sure,
but at some
yes.
point in the future.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Okay. So then just to say, like, my feedback would be, like, I understand there's reasons we don't, we want to exclude certain things, but, like, it would make me feel more comfortable and that we were not just trying to kind of game this to maximum effect and actually trying to comply with the spirit of this law, which I do think is important for the Commonwealth, even though I wouldn't have designed it like this. I wouldn't, if I were the, ruler of DHCD, which I'm really not, I would have done this in a different way. But nonetheless, I think it's important that we are, trying to figure out how we move forward in a way that makes sense and complies with the spirit of the law, which is to make it possible for people to continue to live in this community who are being priced out right now, as every community around us is trying to do. So that is my feedback for consideration for the team.
Thank you. I'd also say, I think, through our conversations with the planner and Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, we'd like this, or we'd like this pink section to be bigger, but we can only receive so much credit for it. We're really maxing out what we can get credit for as zoned as mandatory mixed use. So maybe if more of the yellow were pink, the map would look a little better.
Well, just explicitly, like, my suggestion here is that we go beyond the narrow minimum, and that because we're going through the work of zoning this, that, making the parcel perspective, I don't know if that complicates the filing at all, but if we are doing more than is required, it seems like we should be able to do more, and that should be our discretion if we're meeting all of these tests that the state is putting out for us. Is that not the case?
I guess to comply, the city needs to have capacity in Malden Center, and if we're maxing out at 1723 or whatever it is, we don't end up with as much capacity in Malden Center as might make sense given the goals that have been expressed to us.
Right, I understand that. So, and this will be my last point. So, but let's say we just wanted to add the Stop and Shop parcel to this map. Now, that, we've already demonstrated we've met the tests, right? And so would we be able to do that and submit that to the state? Because it's above what their requirements are, right?
Sure, but the concern is displacing the grocery store and not being able to mandate through 3A allowable uses, not being able to mandate that it be a grocery store.
Right, no, I understand that. I'm not necessarily recommending that we add that parcel, I just want to be clear that like we could add other parcels as long as we're already
Oh, yeah.
meeting this test.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. I'll stop.
especially in this chunk
Yeah.
of it.
Got it,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, no, just to follow up on a couple of questions from Councilor McDonald. You know, our existing affordable housing ordinance does allow, already has incentives. So in terms of reducing parking and some other requirements. So if someone wants to do 100% affordable housing, there are already incentives built in. So I think that they can still take advantage of that. It's just that we can't, this isn't, you know, and we are hopefully going to get at least a minimum of 15%, but if someone wants to do more, I think the dilemma is that the tension is that I think the state level is, you know, looking at 10%. We're gonna have to make the argument, and we're taking the effort to really update the report that allowed us to go to 15% to see that's viable. So, I think, but it doesn't prevent someone from coming in and taking advantage of the other incentives and going to 100%. And then just, I know the Stop and Shop property did come in, and I know Craig can chime on this if he wants, but I think it is a concern. I mean, that's a central grocery store, and it's a very viable thing. And if we put it in by right, even with a ground level commercial, you know, that takes it, if it's in special permit, it doesn't prevent Stop and Shop from coming in and proposing something that we might have to look at some other zoning changes, but at least they have to come to the planning board or the city council to talk about that, so we can say, hey, this is a hugely important business, you know, we need a grocery store there. So I think that's the type of thing that we would have more say as a community as to what happens. I mean, you can see how central that parcel is. It's very, you know, has a lot of potential to be developed. So I think that's the type of thing that at least we would, as a community, either through this council or the planning board, be able to have a lot of input as to what exactly happens. And still, I mean, I think maybe the hope is if you have the other things happening, then that would make more sense and we can work and promote that. So, so that's the type of thing. So I just wanted to go through, just looking at the, can we go back to the table? Just I wanted to just clarify here. So just kind of going through the sub-district. So when you look and it says Malden Center capacity units versus existing units. This is basically saying that if we just go by capacity, right now, what we've already have built in the city exceeds what our zoning would even allow, basically, right? So that right now, there's 200 more units built than even the zoning would allow, basically. That's what that's saying, right? No? Okay, well, right, so explain what that means. So yeah.
So the existing units shows, you know, obviously what's there today. A lot of that was approved by special permit, other types of approaches. And the unit capacity is granting new by right multifamily on areas that don't currently have multifamily. So if those were to be built, you would have more units. That was mostly meant to show a level of scale. So, you know, here's the amount of housing that could be built here. Here's the units that you already have, but it's not exactly one-to-one because it's on a parcel-by-parcel basis. It's not the whole district.
So I'm just trying to understand. So like Malden Center, we have some buildings that are 12 stories or whatever. Those are done by permit. Now we wouldn't allow those. So that's why that number, the existing units, is higher than the capacity units. And then Oak Grove, we're looking at, that's an extra, if we proceed, then there is adding capacity there. I mean, Altitude and Overlook Ridge, we're basically saying that those are static. There's not going to be addition or subtraction there. The neighborhoods, again, that's one where we're basically the existing units are above what the capacity credit is there. And then again, mandatory mixed use, the pink area is where the most substantial amount of units would potentially be added. So it's really like the growth would be focused in Oak Grove and the pink area. That's really what we're focusing on. And the other areas would pretty much be static or that. And so in the other, like let's say the neighborhood, the fact that we would pass this is not gonna give people extra ability to build more. I mean, that's not, we're just taking credit for the zoning that we have, and okay, just trying to understand
No,
how that works.
Yeah, that's not quite right.
Okay, but,
So even though, kind of like in downtown, how the capacity is lower than the existing number of units, in that blue area, I'm just gonna skip over to it.
Yeah.
The new allowable density will be three family.
okay,
So anywhere there that is not currently a three family, and there,
is over 5,000 square feet, which a lot of those are.
yeah. So yeah, if you, basically, there are some areas in there where this would grant new capacity, but still, the overall capacity is indeed lower than the existing land use, and that's, again, because you have some parcels that are much higher in terms of what's currently on the ground.
okay, so individually, there might be a property that meets the minimum lot size, like just in the neighborhood. So there might be properties that meet the minimum lot size and are only 1 or 2 stories in that, adding that story. So there's some ability, even in the blue areas, even if there's not the focus, is changed, there might be some extra ability to add units in those areas, even though we're not taking credit for that necessarily or whatever, so that's.
Yeah, I mean, there are some units, there are some existing properties with, say, 5 units that would be zoned for, by right 7. And then there are other properties that currently have 40 units that, under these dimensions, would be zoned for something closer to 28 by right, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's good I'm asking this question, so I understand a little bit. So it really depends on the parcel, and, I mean, if they meet the minimum lot size and still have some capacity for height or density or parking, potentially, even in the blue and the blue areas, there could be additional housing, but it's really kind of more of a site-specific determination. All right, thank you, great.
You will find Councilor. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Council President. In these neighborhoods, you are going by this map, you override our existing zoning ordinances, correct?
It's an overlay. Yep.
You override it. Like Residence A, Residence B, Residence C. You need 13,000.
Yeah, so you can still do everything that's in the underlying zoning. So you can still come forward with a project that's residence A or B, but you can also come with an MBTA specific project, which will have its own set of rules.
Like to build a 2-family house, I think it requires about 13,000 square feet in our existing zoning ordinances. And there's a huge difference up here. It seems like we're going to, it's already a bad area traffic-wise. To add 7,000 units, 7,000 units, I mean, I'm trying to picture what the city of Malden would be like, density-wise. I mean, I think we're making a bad situation worse with this. I mean, it's always nice to have housing units built, but you have to look at what happens to the city itself. I represent the neighborhood on the other side of the railroad tracks and up Summer Street and Florence Street. And it's a lot by right, isn't it? They can build by right?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So Yeah, the housing will be by right if you meet the requirements. But I wanted to respond to the 7,000 units. That's it's a bit of a mischaracterization or misunderstanding, because where a lot of the units, a lot of the capacity, let's say, has been allocated is unlikely to change. So, for example, Altitude and Overlook Ridge, those are existing properties. And they're, it's a little bit different than what we're proposing in the neighborhoods or even Malden Center, where we're just saying that what is there today is going to be by right in the future, and therefore that's added to your capacity for by right. So those won't be part of the 7,000 units. And if you look at the map, you'll notice that a lot of the buildings that we bring into the neighborhoods are existing 3-family, 4-family, 40-family. There's a lot of multifamily back there, actually. And so in terms of the actual impact, the actual likelihood of change in terms of like what's actually going to be brought forward in terms of by right is going to be significantly less than 7,000.
What would you estimate? 3,000?
Right now? Well, okay, there's a couple different aspects. In some areas, the expected value is everything that's by right. So National Grid doesn't have any housing on it right now. So if that were to come to fruition, that would be all 300 or 400 units. That would be by right. Whereas in the neighborhoods and some other areas, it's going to be in the order of hundreds, not thousands.
40B, that requires a 10% affordable housing component, correct? These people that build these by right, are they going to be required to meet that 10% standard that the state expects us to meet?
So the 40B program allows developers to come into communities who aren't currently achieving 10% of subsidized affordable housing. I think Malden is currently in what's called safe harbor, if I understand correctly. So you're protected from that. The point of adding 15% inclusionary zoning would be such that new projects that are coming in help contribute to keep you above 10%, because each one of them is coming in with 15.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cronin. Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to go back really quickly to the affordable component. And I understand, Councilor McDonald, about we're doing sort of the bare minimum just to make sure that that we're required to comply. And I think that's sort of what we need to do under this, because we do get the 15% of the inclusionary zoning, and maybe we incentivize to go up higher, but I would prefer not to have so many sort of by right with the 15% and sort of save some of these parcels that we really work with the Affordable Housing Trust and do 100% of the affordable housing. So, Jimmy, it's kind of that we do what we have to do under this. We have the 15% and hopefully incentivize, but really not expand it too much, because we're only getting the 15% and sort of keep some of those parcels that, Salvation Army, that's going to be 100%. So I'd rather look at it that way. And looking to make sure that people can afford to stay, and hopefully some home ownership as well, opportunities.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor Spatafora. Yep, you're next, Councilor Simonelli.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, I had the pleasure of working with Debbie and the group, and Michelle and Council Winslow on this. And as you can tell by this presentation, it's a lot to unpack. Council Winslow and myself had several rounds to watch this change and progress. To Councilor McDonald's point, we asked the same questions even before the state updated the rule to allow for mixed use. Like, if we allowed to have mixed use, could you allow them to build more units? And the question was always The state says by right, you can't put any conditions on it. Similar to, your question about, can we add more units based on affordability? It's by right, so that's the challenge. And then the whole, balancing that map is not an easy process. It certainly looks simple here, but it was, probably a dozen calls to get to the point. The point is basically, the development and growth of the city, what we try to, at least from my perspective, it's a transit-oriented mandate by the state, but it does have flaws, certainly, because it doesn't affect affordability, it doesn't change one of these things. And one of the good things the state did was, I'm glad it has that commercial aspect, because one thing that I think, and I'm not saying the council's gotten away from it, we have to make sure we protect our commercial industrial zones, simply because they pay a high tax rate. If we wipe the map clean and put all housing, the taxes are gonna go up for the residents. I mean, you look at some cities around us that have a very nice commercial base and industrial base, it keeps those taxes affordable, which helps the home ownership, right? It's, raising taxes is aggression it makes it less affordable to people. So it's a balancing act between the community needs, community preservation, the local character. It's not easy. Now you compound that with the fact that we got to rush to get to this state because they've changed it 2 or 3 times, I think, in the last 6 or 7 months, but they've never extended the deadline. So the challenge is here. That's why we're here before you tonight. It seems rushed. I want to show you 2 things. It is not rushed. We've done a lot of work. But B, the date is coming up and we have to get something to the state. I think tweaks will probably happen, but to the degree of major tweaks, probably not. But it certainly was a pleasure to be on that committee, because if I was sitting here and the other councils who were not in those meetings, it's confusing, it's daunting, and the questions about, why is it colored that way? Why didn't you include this? We could do that all day, because we've done that. So great work to the team. I want to say, being on those calls and seeing all the scenarios. But I think I just wanted to ground the conversation in terms of how we got there and somewhat the rationale there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Councilor Simonelli, your light does work.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Madam President. Hold on a second. I have to write things down now. I forget. That's happening. And then it goes to the pen. So let me ask you this. I've been here for the last year and a half or so, or 2 years coming up on now, and been very busy. I know that a lot of people up here have been talking with you folks on multiple occasions, but so some of these questions I might ask might be redundant to some folks, but to me, it's just information, right? So what is driving this? What's the ultimate goal? What are we looking for? How is this gonna, be a positive impact on the city of Malden as a whole on it? Because it's very confusing, all this stuff here. I mean, I think every one of us that have asked questions so far, you've corrected, or it doesn't mean what it says. So if it doesn't mean what it says to us up here, the people on the outside that are looking in, it doesn't look too good to them either. So they're probably confused as well. So I'd like to know, in like a nutshell, like what is this going to be doing for the city? Where's the positive impact here? And I've got some other questions to ask you after that, but tell me, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Why do we want this?
Okay. So the most positive impact.
I've been sleeping under a rock for the last 10 years before I came back. When I was here, we were putting in a moratorium not to build any more housing units on a postage stamp. So I just want to know what happened and how it's changed and where are we now? So
the most important thing that you're going to get out of this is you're not going to get sued by the state for noncompliance.
Okay,
and
so they're making us do this.
And you're going to continue to receive state funds for working on your roads, other state grants. You're going to be in the good standing with the state and not fighting them. So that was why this project started. I don't think that your department would have gone out to bid to rezone by right multifamily in the absence of the new legislation. But now that we're here, we're trying to do a good job of making sure that there is new multifamily in your downtown that fits with the context. So that's why we have these different character zones where we are trying to add to your CBD, make sure that the neighborhoods are brought along. We spent time with this group previously talking about these major corridors leading into town as being good candidates for upzoning. And so we're trying to do the best we can to contribute to livability in Malden and also comply with the new legislation.
All right, well, I mean, some of the issues I have is, the affordability. We've been talking about affordability for a long time, and we could sit up here, I think we could make Malden, put a bubble over Malden, make it all affordable, and there'll still be a waiting list. And that's one of my issues too, we talk about people getting priced out of our community, but really, you don't have any say on who gets these units. It could be anybody. It's like a consortium. So people coming from Chelsea, it's not for Malden residents. Malden residents are not particularly going to benefit from the more added affordability units that we put into the city of Malden. Am I wrong there, or does that sound right? I mean, if we have to do it, if it's mandated by the state, I hear what you're saying. I'm just speaking out loud here, saying that and then, because then I'm being told once again, we got to rush to get this thing in again. And I think that if history hasn't proven itself to us already, Russian has gotten us into some problems already with the Route 60 corridor, making sure that, before they put paint down, we didn't check the traffic lights and, make sure that we're playing catch up. So, and that was another thing that had to be rushed on. And so I'm concerned that it's almost like, here's what the program is, here's what they're saying you got to do, and now hurry up and do it, and keep your questions to a minimum. And even if you're confused up there, it doesn't matter. We got to get this done. So I guess what I'm asking for the Maldonians out there, how does this benefit them? Other than us getting sued by the state and them not giving us extra money for road work, how does that benefit them with the affordability clause and all that?
Do you want me to give you a quick answer?
Sure.
First of all, we're being strong-armed by the state.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay? We're being denied funding if we don't go along with this.
Okay.
Once again, being strong-armed by the state. They either sue us or they take money away from us. And as to your next question, we're dancing with the devil again, just like the Route 60. And the only way that I see a benefit to the people of Malden is for those in the neighborhood that now have a 2-family, they'll be able to maybe have a 3-family and have an additional dwelling unit that they will be able to rent out. But that's the only benefit that I see to the community. It's going to increase density. It's, to me, we're being penalized because we have 2 T stations here. Unlike other communities have to do things, but if you have a T station, you're really being hit hard by these requirements from the state. So, will it help a few people in the neighborhoods? Yes, it will. Will it also cause, people to maybe go, oop, I got another unit now, I'm not going to be an owner-occupied person, I'm going to rent everything out and I'm moving out of the city to someplace that isn't, so densely populated that people don't want to live here.
Right.
So, once again, we're dancing with the devil. I don't know what else to say.
No, okay, and they, very, very, very elegantly explained. Thank you, I appreciate that, Madam President. So what's our choices here? I mean, it's, even with the making, a 2-family into a 3-family and, providing that they have a place to put their cars, because I don't know about anybody else up here, but I'm getting ready to put in for, residential parking only in my neighborhood because Everett has it, and what's happening now is all the people that don't have a residential sticker are coming over into my neighborhood because they're right on the border. So they park 2-3 streets over, and I got some serious density and parking issues going on in my neighborhood as it is already, and it's just gonna get worse. So, I just wanna be clear that, I want the public to know that if we're getting strong-armed, they need to know that because, we're being held hostage here for a vote. Because honestly, the way I look at it and see it right now, I'd be a no vote on this. But I don't want to penalize the city and not get funding to do the roads over and stuff like that either. But, if you were just a private, not you particularly, but if it was just a private developer coming in here with this piecemeal map and, all of these numbers that mean something and don't mean something, I would say, listen, when you get all your stuff together and you got it in a nice format, come and see us. But right now, we're pretty busy up here, and I'm worried about, if people got enough food to eat in my district, and if they got a place to rest their head at night. And to me, this is just like kind of a haphazard way of bringing it forward to us with the way these numbers are all chopped in, and we can do this, this means that, this doesn't mean this. So I'd be a hard no as of right now. But again, I don't want to hurt the city in its capacity to be able to get financing. And I don't, I don't really care except for Malden folks. I'll be the first one to say it up here. If it's gonna help the people in my district that are getting priced out of the city of Malden and their families, that I'd be, the first one up here saying, yeah, let's make some more units, which we are. That's why we're doing affordable home ownership in my area, so that we have more say on the residents, so we can gear it for the people that are like living and raising families in this community, not for a consorption because they're higher on the list and they come from East Boston or Chelsea, and they're jumping over the people that are from Malden that are looking for a place to live, because I get calls for that every day, all day. I get calls for housing for families that I've known growing up here. So I don't know. I'm very confused up here on where we should go with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Simonelli. Council Cologne Hayes.
Thank you. I'll try and be really brief. I almost forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. So thank you for including in some discussions from the last time, like with the mixed use, so that's appreciated. And just for people watching also, we know that this is coming, this is something that we can't say no to. I actually started to run some numbers on what we would lose, where the funding comes, and it obviously doesn't make any sense. We have to do this. And so for the surveys, it looks like, so the deadline is in a few days, and what we've seen here almost looks set. So when the survey results come in, I think Councilor Linehan might have asked this already too, is there any chance if we don't get as much feedback, if we had a goal, I'm not sure, like would we extend it? And then also just on, I completed the survey, and this is, so it's probably late to bring this up, but maybe real like language, clear language, and maybe an 8th grade almost even language of this funding will lose, be very clear that people don't think this is something that, that this is something that we have to do, basically, right? And kind of put that in a little bit of a blurb, but that might be too late, but if we do extend it, just a little feedback on that. So I guess the question would be, when these results come in, do you see this changing drastically in any way?
So the nice part about having the results of the survey on a rolling basis is we were able to make some modifications. The biggest one being increasing density at Oak Ridge. That was something that we heard from the community. So we feel like we've been capturing that. There's also been a lot of other voices in terms of what staff knows can and can't work, this council. So there's a lot of different voices to weigh in terms of and we think this is the best compromise we have at the moment, especially for this 90-day deadline, which is next week.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you. Thanks for coming before us tonight.
Very fine, Council. Councilor Winslow, and then I'm going to take.
Yeah, I was just trying to respond. I'll go get Councilor Simonelli. I just wanted to, respond to something. No, I'm just waiting for them, so.
Are they coming?
There we go. All right, Chris, sorry.
I didn't want to get yelled at.
No, Chris,
Yeah.
I understand, and especially you know, the neighborhood you grew up in, and I'm sure a lot of the folks, constituents, housing cost is a huge, huge thing, and I hear you. One of the things I want to say is that, there's this aspect, especially related to affordability, that the fact that we've passed affordable housing, I've seen that benefit my family. My daughter, my granddaughter's probably like a fourth or fifth generation Somervillian. We know how much prices have gone up there. And they've been able to take a benefit of first affordable apartment that was built at the old Boys and Girls Club there. Amazingly, my daughter, she works as like a medical secretary, not a big paying job, but a reliable job. She was able to actually now buy a condo, and that's all because of Somerville, a lot before we did. They intentionally started planning affordable housing. And I think it's great, we, as a council, before he came on, we created the affordable housing requirements, we created Affordable Housing Trust. And it's great to know that we're working with Asian Community Development Corporation. You should really meet with M.G.L. And the Asian community, Chinese community in Chinatown and Boston, they faced this thing for 40 years. And it's interesting now, 40 years later, Boston's Chinatown is one of the most vibrant communities in terms of Chinese community. There's a lot of vacant, there might be Chinatowns in places where they have the restaurants, but people have been priced out and don't live there. So by being intentional and working as a community to make sure we are working to create affordable housing for the needs of people here, you can make it happen. In Boston, it took 40 years. We're only a few years into this, but I hear you, and so that's the thing. This is all part of that. I mean, what this whole effort, we can say the state is punishing it, but it's acknowledgement in Boston that we need to do something. The other thing, by perspective, is I grew up in Silicon Valley. My folks bought a house for $40,000 in 1963 when we moved there. When my folks sold it, it was $1.8 million. That's the type of thing, if we as a community in Boston, if we don't do this intentionally and work with the state, it's just a mess. I mean, people drive for hours to try to work. My family who are teachers or county sheriffs, it's very hard to afford there. So, and let alone people who work at, Starbucks or something like that. So they did not do a lot of intentional things. So I think it's great. We're trying to do this. It's really, I often say, and having served on the Affordable Housing Trust, it's really important. Malden will lose something if we don't move forward on this because it's been an affordable place for people to raise a family. And if we aren't intentional, and this is a pretty modest thing. I mean, we're talking about, several hundred units, 900 units maybe, and if you probably 300 of them are illusionary because National Grid is going to be very tough to build on. This is a modest step. So I think this acknowledges the survey information that people are concerned about booming growth, like the crazy stuff that's happening in Somerville. So this is modest, that's consistent with Malden. Like I say, I think Councilor Spatafor and I really when we were settling in on, let's keep it to Malden Center. I know Councilor Sika was concerned. Let's not go crazy up at, the old Granada, the altitudes or whatever. Let's keep the parking requirements there the same. I think we've been listening, and this is great work. So I think that is the thing. It's a modest step, but I think it is, if we don't move forward intentionally, you're going to get twice as many calls. So that's the type of thing. We do have to acknowledge that it's getting more expensive, and if we as a community don't work, like the Asian community did in Boston for 40 years to make Chinatown still affordable for people who live there, Malden's going to get hollowed out just like places in Silicon Valley. So that's just, we have to be intentional. It's a struggle, but that's really where I come from. But I think, that is part of the work. And it's hard work, it takes time. But I do have to say, we can be successful if we grind at it and be listening to our community and really keeping your folks at the heart of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebuttal?
Councilor
No.
Wins? No?
I just wanted to just answer.
Well, Councilor Winslow's waiting. Okay, do you want to?
No, I mean, I was just going to respond to it, that's all. No?
Council Winslow's, Council McDonald's next. I mean, I think he's given you the answer, so.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to say, so I think the opportunity is really in this mandatory mixed use section. That's really where I think we see some changes from what, is currently there. And those, at that size, would really trigger our inclusionary zoning ordinance. I mean, they'd almost have to. And that does include a local preference requirement, which means that the maximum the state will allow us to do, which I believe is 70%, Deb said, yes, 70% of the affordable units, we require every permit to use the local preference for 70% of those units. So if it's only 2 affordable units, that's one of them. But my point is, the more that we get built, the majority of those affordable housing units should be reserved, the large majority, for Malden residents across these projects. That's a condition of the special permit. So I just wanted to say that.
That's for the rentals? That's for the rental? I know you can do it when you do affordable home ownership. I didn't know that you could do that with the rentals. 'Cause you couldn't before, so that's why I was, is that?
You can you
I mean,
express
that's a
a preference
plus.
about that?
You can do 70% preference for both home ownership and rentals. Sometimes it depends on what funding sources are in there. You have to produce, some strong documents, so statements about furthering, affirmative marketing efforts towards housing and whatnot, because you want to make sure there's accessibility to all people, but you can do a 70% preference.
Well, I mean, that changes things. Yeah, that's good. I mean, because, when Housing Families had come down and built the 20 units, they made some concessions to me for, helping them out to get them down there, for changing some of the zoning and allowing that to be built. A lot of neighborhood folks didn't want another 20 units of affordable housing. We had Newland Street, we had Malden Apartments, and the houses. You were part of that team back then, Deb. And, they couldn't put it on paper. They did help out a couple of families that, we requested, but for some reason, whoever was lending the funds wouldn't allow them to put that in writing. So, after Jack Daly left and some other folks left, to try and get somebody, one of those units that are a Malden family and already living in Malden is impossible to do so. So, and that's something that I have been saying for a while, particularly in my neighborhood where we have a lot of affordable units. We're the mecca for affordable units. Newland Street, Malden Street, go on forever, scattered housing. We've created a lot of it. We created a lot of affordable home ownership, so there's a definite need for it. But the east side has taken that, to another level as far as affordability goes. And what happens is that, what's the incentive for a city council like me, for example, right now, if I, for instance, will use that Housing Families, right? Those 20 units, I can't get anybody in those, and it's been like that for the last 10, 12 years because it's a consortium. So then what happens is whoever else is on the list, if there's people that are ahead that are from, Medford, Somerville, Chelsea, Revere, Everett, they can jump over the Malden folks that are living in there. So as a city council, I'm saying I'm going to create more density in my community, and it's not even going to be benefiting Malden folks. So that was the way it was. If you're telling me now that that's not the case, and you can go as high as 70%, then that's really good, and that changes things. So, and to, my counselor to my left, Councilor Winslow, I just wanted to say that the information he gave me is pretty good too. So I guess we can get there if we work on it. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Simonelli. And from the chair, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, when you sit here as president, you ask people to get on committees. Some committees are very easy. They don't take a lot of time. Other committees are very complicated. Councilor Winslow, when I looked at the team, I thought Councilor Winslow and Councilor Spatafora, with their backgrounds, would be best suited to serve on this committee with the team. And I want to thank the both of them for the time and effort that they put in to bring this to us. I know it's not easy, and as Councilor Spatafora said, earlier, when you've gone through the process, you understand the back and forth and all the changes, and for it to just be presented to us, I think we have to have a little faith in Councilor Spatafor and Councilor Winslow that they did their best to kind of take what they know most of us feel, and we have very different viewpoints on things, and carve it into something that's somewhat palatable. Councilor Crowe also hit the nail on the head when she was speaking earlier. Going at this at the minimum amount is wise, because, as she said, there's certain parcels that we don't want to give up to this, that we want to keep in the neighborhoods, that we want to be able to utilize for our affordable housing or our inclusionary zoning. Because as has been set up here, the state has not mandated any inclusionary zoning or affordable housing in these projects, if I'm correct. It is our zoning, our inclusionary zoning, that this council over the last few years has worked so hard on, that is what's allowing us to have that 70% preference in our area, and requiring new development to give affordable units, which goes to the point of what Councilor Winslow was speaking about Chinatown. It's not this. Okay, it's not that, I'm sorry. It's what we've done here as a council that's allowing us to do that in the future. So I think going with the minimum amount is the smartest way if we have to do this. I think it's good. We can always change things as we move forward. I did have one question about, not necessarily altitude, but Overlook Ridge. You know, obviously the figures are staying the same there. That's at a full capacity build out at Overlook. Do we know the answer to that? Anyone? Current.
Under current zoning, that's
Okay.
the full capacity.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we were including
it's
the
not
areas that were
counting-
not built.
No, it's not counting the pending zoning amendments to rezone up there.
Okay, but but as it is today.
It's,
the
as
no-
of today, the max,
The max that could be built there, whether it's built or not built.
right, but
Yes, okay.
everything is built out.
Everything's there, okay.
In the current districts, right?
Okay, perfect. All right, that was all that I had. I want to thank the team once again. I know that this was, you know, a challenge, I will say, to all of you, because I just thanked our counselors, but, you know, I think the entire team working with a new law that you had to figure out how it actually would be applied here, in taking into consideration Malden and our needs, and trying to limit this to at least protect the city as much as you could. I thank you all for that. I also do believe, just so that we announce here, and Ms. Burke or Ms. Ramiro or someone can probably clarify this, I do believe that in addition to the survey, that we are still required to have a public hearing between now and December, when we actually have to file the final form. Is that correct?
Yes, what's going to happen now is we're going to file the package with the state for the so-called pre-approval and for their determination on a mandatory mixed-use district. But they also recommend we file the whole thing for their review.
Okay.
We're going to get comments back from the state. Hopefully it looks okay, right? But it might include things that we need to address. So then the zoning possibly could get revised again in preparation for filing with the city council. It will come in, it needs to come in early October to meet the deadline for a hearing in November, so that you can ordain it by the December deadline. So we're on a really tight time frame. We'll get state comments back, incorporate them in, file a petition with the council. That will be sent for public hearing in response to your question. That will be a joint public hearing of Planning Board and City Council Ordinance Committee. But honestly, I believe it would be prudent for the entire council to attend that hearing if possible, because there's going to be a lot more information and details at that point that are going to be explained about what these new zoning districts entail. Then it will come back to the council with the planning board recommendation, and then you will have not your full 90 days to review it and decide. You'll be under a real tight time frame, because your last meeting is the 19th of December. So the December 31st date really isn't even the deadline. December 19th is the deadline, unless you're going to do another meeting after that, so.
Okay. Well, once again, I want to thank everyone who participated in this process, and we will look forward to the next update. So thank you very much. No,
Thank you for
no,
having
no,
us.
not motion to adjourn. We're still going. Thank you, thank you. So we need to, once again, I need a motion to suspend, excuse me, I need a motion to suspend docket rules. Okay, so it's by Councilor Simonelli, seconded by Councilor Cologne Hayes. Clerk, will you, you're going to read, do you want me to read the whole thing? It'll be easier. All right. Yes, all those in favor of suspending docket rules? Aye. Opposed? Docket rules are suspended, council rules are suspended, more specifically. Clerk will read the next order of business, please.
Paper 316-23, order that the City Council will vote to go into executive session with legal counsel for the city regarding the matter of Benevolent Botanicals of 926 Eastern Avenue v. the City of Malden for the purposes of Exemption 3, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, where such discussion in open meeting may have detrimental effect on the litigation position of the city, if so declared by the chair, and if so also allowed by the body to omit Maria Louise, Special Assistant to the Mayor.
Yes. So I am going to publicly state that we are going to go into executive session to discuss litigation where such discussion in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the city, if so declared, yes, by the city. I would also if allowed by the body to admit Maria Louise, Special Assistant to the Mayor. On that motion, clerk will call the roll. Made by Councilor Crowe, seconded by Councilor Simonelli. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Cologne Hayes. Yes. Councilor Condon. Yes. Councilor Crowe. Yes. Councilor Linehan. Yes. Councilor McDonald. Yes. Councilor Seega. Yes. Councilor Simonelli. Yes. Councilor Spatafora. Yes. Councilor Winslow. Yes. Council President Murphy.
Yes, and for those watching on television, after we come back from executive session, we will just come back to adjourn. There will be no further business conducted by this body tonight.